the janitor who inherited the skyscraper he cleaned. There's a tower in the center of the city that everyone has looked up at, and almost no one has been inside. 40 floors of glass, a crown of gold light that burns long after the offices go dark. Before we go further, if stories like this are what you came for, take a second to subscribe to Hidden Narratives, because the next one is already on its way. Now let's get into it. The man who owned it was worth more than some countries. When he died, everyone expected the fortune to go to a son, a foundation, a rival who'd been circling for years. Instead, he left the entire tower and the company inside it to the man who cleaned its floors at night. No one knew why. The lawyers were certain it was a crime. It wasn't. It was a debt, and it had waited 40 years to be paid. Marcus Hale came to Vance Tower every weeknight at 10, when the day people folded their laptops and stepped into the elevators without seeing him. That was the thing about the man with the cart. You became furniture. People talked over him, around him, a foot from his shoulder, and to them he was no more there than the plants by the windows. Marcus didn't mind. There was a peace in being unseen. He was 64, and he had not always pushed a cart. Most of his life he'd been a machinist, good hands, the kind of man who could feel 1,000th of an inch with his fingertips. He'd had a small shop, a steady marriage to a woman named Ruth, a house nearly paid off. Then Ruth got sick. The long kind of sick. The kind that eats a savings account 1 month at a time. You sell the shop, then the car, then the tools you swore you'd never sell. Ruth died on a Tuesday in spring. The debt did not die with her. So at 58, a man who built things took the only steady work he could find. Nights, in a tower downtown, with a cart and a ring of keys. He cleaned 39 of the 40 floors, the 40th, the founder's residence, the source of that gold light. He was never allowed to enter. In all his years there, he'd never met Theodore Vance. Almost no one had. For the last 20 years of his life, the founder had not been seen in public. He ran his empire through letters and lawyers and lived, the rumor went, at the very top of his own tower. So Marcus was as surprised as anyone when, one cold night in his final winter there, the private elevator opened and a thin old man in a worn cardigan stepped out. The old man didn't introduce himself. He just looked out at the city and said, "You missed a light. Down there. The river district. Used to be all factories." "Most of those closed before my time, sir," Marcus said. "Mine too," the old man said. "Almost." There were other nights. Marcus took him for some retired uncle of the company who couldn't sleep. They talked, never long, never about anything that pinned the old man down. The river, the weather, whether a man could change the shape of his whole life in a single night. Marcus told him about Ruth, a little, and about the strange grief of having good hands and nothing left to build. The old man listened the way almost no one in that building had ever listened to the man with the cart, as if every word were being kept. Once the old man asked, "Do you remember the kindest thing you ever did?" "Not the biggest, the kindest." "I don't keep a list," Marcus said. "You do a thing because it's in front of you. Then you forget it and do the next one." The old man was quiet for a long moment. "Yes," he said softly. "That's exactly how it works." The visit stopped in February. Marcus assumed he'd moved on, and hoped he was sleeping better wherever he'd gone. Then on the 1st of March, Marcus arrived, and the lobby was full of people who didn't belong to the night. Theodore Vance was dead, 10 days gone, the funeral already private and over. Marcus felt the loss the way you feel the loss of a man you never met, but somehow knew. He did not connect it to an old man in a cardigan. Why would he? The most powerful man in the city did not come down to talk to the janitor about the river. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at his apartment. Heavy paper. a law firm's name embossed at the top. It requested the presence of Mr. Marcus Hale at the reading of the last will of Theodore Allen Vance. The 40th floor conference room was the first room on that floor Marcus had ever entered. He came in his cleanest shirt and stood by the door until the attorney, Diane Whitfield, waved him to a seat among people in suits that cost more than his car. He could tell from their faces that no one had told them why he was there either. Whitfield read, bequests first, staff, charities, a hospital, then the part the board was braced for. The controlling stake, the tower, the empire. She paused and her eyes found Marcus. The entirety of my controlling interest in the Vance Group, she read. Together with Vance Tower and all assets contained therein, I leave to Mr. Marcus Hale. The room didn't erupt. It went silent, the silence of people doing frantic arithmetic, and then filled with voices all at once. Fraud, undue influence. This man had access. Get the accountants. This will not stand. There's a mistake, Marcus said. I cleaned the floors. I never met him. I swear it. And Diane Whitfield slid a second envelope across the table. His name was on it, in handwriting. He told me you'd say that, she said. He asked me to give you this when you did. Inside was a single page and a photograph, and the photograph stopped his heart. 40 years old, the colors gone soft, a steel bridge at night, the river district behind it, lit by factories that no longer existed. 2 young men. One a thin, desperate stranger sitting on the wrong side of the railing, the other a young factory worker climbing over to sit beside him, holding out a thermos of coffee. The young worker was unmistakably Marcus. He remembered it then, not as a story he kept, but whole. A night 40 years ago, walking home across the river bridge. A man on the far side of the railing looking down at the black water. Marcus hadn't weighed whether to stop. The man was in front of him. So he climbed over, sat on the cold edge, held out his coffee, and said the first thing that came. It's a long way down and a long night up here. Drink this, then tell me what's so heavy. They'd talked until the sky turned gray. The man had failed at something, a business, a marriage. Marcus never learned the details, only the size of the despair. Marcus told him what his own father used to say, that the night is the worst liar you'll ever meet, because it swears the morning is never coming. He'd walked the man to an all-night diner and bought him eggs with the last folded bills in his pocket. When the man asked why a stranger would do all that, Marcus shrugged. Because you were in front of me. Then he'd gone home to Ruth and slept and forgotten it. He had never known the man's name. He turned the photograph over. On the back, in the same hand as the letter, the night you sat down beside me, I had decided not to see the morning. You changed my mind with a thermos of coffee and a sentence about the night being a liar. I built everything I built on the mornings you gave me. TV. The letter was longer, and Marcus read it with the whole room watching. 40 years ago, I stood on that bridge with nothing left. You sat down next to me, not to pull me back, just to sit, as if my company were worth having. You never asked my name, never came looking for thanks. I spent 40 years becoming the man you talked off that bridge, and a great deal of money trying to find you, with nothing but a face and the word machinist. I never found you. Then 6 years ago, a sleepless old man read the night roster of his own building, and there was your name. The moment you turned around, I was sure. I should have told you. But I couldn't bear for the only honest friendship of my old age to become a transaction. So I came down as an old man who couldn't sleep, and you told me about your Ruth, and you never knew you were forgiving a debt you didn't know you were owed. Those were the best nights I had left. This building is not a gift, Marcus. It is a repayment. You gave me the rest of my life on a cold bridge for the price of a cup of coffee. Tell the lawyers the math works perfectly. Tell them I always pay my debts. And do one thing for me. Somewhere out there tonight, someone is on the wrong side of a railing deciding the morning isn't coming. You know what to do. You did it for me when I was nobody. Theodore, the man from the bridge. The lawyers were already building their case. A confused old man, a janitor with access. Marcus let them talk. Then, in the quiet machinist's voice that had held tools to 1,000th of an inch, he said the only thing that mattered. I thought he was a lonely old man nobody visited. I'd have sat with him for free for the rest of my life. I didn't know about any of this. But I remember the bridge. He remembered it longer than I did. That's the whole story. And it was. Whitfield had the diner receipt, kept for 40 years. The investigators' invoices, decades of them. A recording in Theo's own failing voice, stating he was of sound mind. There was nothing false in the will to break. Marcus Hale never moved into the 40th floor. He kept his apartment. He did not loot the company the way they feared, or run it the way they expected. He hired people who knew what he didn't, and asked in every meeting the one question the letter had left him with. Who is on the wrong side of a railing tonight? And what are we doing about it? Within a year, the gold light at the top of Vance Tower belonged to something new. The Bridge Foundation, he called it, quiet, all-night rooms in the River District, and a dozen cities like it. Warm places with coffee, and someone whose only job was to sit down beside a stranger on the worst night of their life and stay until the morning came and ask nothing in return. He funded it with a fortune he had never sought. When reporters asked why a man would give away most of what he'd been handed, he always said the same thing. It was never mine. A man gave it to me to hold. I'm just keeping the change moving. Sometimes late, he'd go up to the dark windows where the old man used to stand and look down at the River District and find the one light that was always burning now in a warm room by the water. There it is, he'd say to no one. You didn't miss it after all. We tell ourselves that the kindnesses that matter are the grand ones, the rescues, the sacrifices, the moments we'd want a camera to catch. But Marcus never kept a list because the night on the bridge hadn't felt like a turning point. It felt like the next small thing in front of him. He gave away a cup of coffee, a sentence, and his last few dollars, and forgot it before he reached his own front door. 40 years later, that forgotten kindness owned a skyscraper. You will almost certainly never know which of your smallest acts is the one someone else is keeping. So do the thing in front of you, then forget it, and do the next one. You'll never know which morning you're giving someone, or one day which one is quietly being given back to you. If this story stayed with you, do me a small favor, Yates, like the video, and subscribe to Hidden Narratives so the next one finds you. Leave a comment and tell me the moment that got you. I read them. And if you're in the mood for another, the next story is waiting for you right now on the screen. Until then, remember that every story has a hidden side.